This is the Trenchless Technology Podcast with your host, Sharon Bueno, Managing Editor of Trenchless Technology Magazine. Welcome to the Trenchless Technology Podcast. Joining me on this episode is our 2022 Trenchless Technology Person of the Year, Derek Potvin. We featured Derek on our March cover and presented him with his award at the recent 2022 NASTT No-Dig show in Minneapolis. Derek has been in the trenchless industry for over 30 years and has been with Robinson Consultants his entire career, which is something we don't often see these days. He started out as an intern and remained with the firm in various roles before becoming its president. Derek and I discuss his background and introduction to the trenchless industry, as well as his perspective on the industry as a whole. He also talks about his bond with NASTT, an association he served as chairman a few years back. He also discusses his role as mentor to the next generation of trenchless engineers. We may also talk about the need to present special red jackets to our past, present, and future Person of the Year recipients. Here is my conversation with Derek Potvin. Welcome, Derek. I'm glad you were able to do the podcast with us today.
Yeah, well, thank you, Sharon, for inviting me.
So have you recovered from No-Dig? It was really great seeing everybody finally.
It was great. Yeah, to miss those 2 years seems like an eternity, really. And it was a bit like a high school reunion to get back together again at the No-Dig show, to reconnect with people and to start learning again. So, yeah, I've recovered, but it was definitely, a bit tiring because it was such a thrill to be there again and meet so many people.
Yeah, it was interesting. My feet, I don't think, have recovered quite yet, but it was really great seeing everybody finally after, like you said, 2 years is a long time. So congratulations again on being our 2022 Trenchless Technology Person of the Year. I'm sure you can't hear that enough.
I could hear it more for sure.
But now that some time has passed since receiving the news and the article was written and you gave the presentation at No-Dig, what are your thoughts and perhaps reflections on being selected Person of the Year?
Well, it's as much of a surprise today as it was when I first heard it, and I by no means mean to take away from the selection committee's selection of me as Person of the Year. But, it was a great honor to receive the call. You work throughout your career to be successful for sure, and you don't work for the accolades. But when you are finally recognized, or you are recognized for it, it's a real honor. And again, I don't want to sound too cliched as I've answered this in the article and others, but when I reviewed the list of past winners over the almost 30 years, there are trenchless legends on that list. So for me to be part of that list is an amazing honor. I'm, again, very thankful to the selection committee and to TT Magazine for making me the Person of the Year.
And you also mentioned, too, that you're friends with past Person of the Year honorees. Maybe we should all get you some green jackets like they do for the golf. We'll get red ones for Trenchless Technology. We'll get red sweaters or jackets. Yeah. But you did mention that you were friends with quite a few.
Yeah, for sure. And it would be a real honor to have that red jacket to rub shoulders with some of these people from the past. I mean, some of the more, I don't want to start naming names too much, but one of the more recent winners is Jim Rankin, who I consider to be a great friend. And, and then there are so many other amazing people on this list. So, yeah, I think the green jacket or red jacket concept would be something I'd be very proud to participate in.
I'll have to run it by and see but at the BMI team and see what they say.
See if the marketing team approves.
Yes. But you're also only the second Canadian to receive this award.
Yeah, so that definitely resonates with me as well. I'm a strong supporter of the society overall and both our countries, and I guess you could add Mexico to that list now. For me to only be the second Canadian really distinguishes the award. So Sam Ariatnam is the other Canadian who is a friend as well. We're both very proud of that distinction.
Now, I know you grew up in Quebec, correct?
Correct.
So talk a little bit about your background education. I know your parents had like a background in medicine, if I remember correctly. Your mom was a nurse and your dad was a doctor. And so how did you gravitate toward engineering?
Well, it was a bit of stumbling into it, but I'll explain. So yes, I did grow up in a small town in Quebec, about an hour from where I live now, in Ontario. I'm in Ottawa, Ontario. There are no universities in our small town, so I had to come to Ottawa, to the University of Ottawa, to study. And both my parents studied at the University of Ottawa as well. They're both alumni. My father is a surgeon, and my mother was a nurse. And so I did start with a degree in biology, but as I started to learn more about engineering while I was at university, I made the switch over to that path. And it was a great experience for me. I studied there for 4 years. The university allowed us to work in small groups. Our civil engineering group was quite small, so we had great access to our professors because of the size of our civil engineering group. And the other thing that I think I benefited from greatly attending the University of Ottawa was co-op program that I followed. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's essentially a program where you go to school for 4 months, work for 4 months, and keep going down the process that way. So not only did it allow me to generate some extra income to pay for my studies, but it also gave me a range of experiences working for various private and public sector engineering businesses. And one of those was a small firm called Robinson Consultants, which is where I am now. So when I completed my degree after having a work term with Robinson Consultants, they hired me on and as a junior engineer, and I've celebrated my 32nd year with the company this past January.
Now, your degree in engineering, is it in civil engineering or mechanical?
It is in civil, yeah. So at that time, we had very few different choices. There were civil, mechanical, electrical, I think, maybe chemical. Now there are many, many ranges of engineering degrees, but back in the old days, it was called civil for me.
How did you get started in Trenchless Technology? What was your introduction to it? Had you heard of it?
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it until I started working in the industry. There was nothing mentioned of it in my years of studying at the university. But when I started with Robinson Consultants, in the first couple of years, I was exposed and did work on some new installation and some rehab projects. But our corporate involvement didn't really get kickstarted until 1995. So I was 5 years into my career. And it got kickstarted when I attended the NESDT No-Dig show in Toronto. And that show was a great first show for a young engineer. Not only were the papers fantastic, and the similar paper program is available today at the No-Dig shows, and they're fantastic. There's great networking opportunities at the exhibit hall. You learn so much from talking to the exhibitors. But Toronto was different in that they had live demos of trenchless projects and technology. So what might take years to see in terms of the various technologies was concentrated into a couple of days at Toronto. So I got to see those 2D images now in 3D, and that really helped me understand what the capabilities were and how they functioned and what their limitations were as well. That education really positioned us well moving forward in the trenchless industry.
What was it about the technology you found so interesting at that point?
You know, it's probably the fact that it was made up with an industry of inventors, I think, and it really just piqued my curiosity. They were taking, some basic things like shoving a pipe through the soil and turning that into a technology that, greatly improved road crossings and different approaches to those sorts of needs. The slip lining and inverted lining of CIPP liners. I mean, those are just great concepts that somebody was, like myself, who was curious, had a great learning opportunity. And I think that's what drew me towards Trenchless Technologies was the inventive and creative people.
So what do you remember about your first Trenchless project?
When I started in my career with Robinson Consultants, I did work on a few smaller new installation projects and some rehab projects, but I'll deem this one my first big project, and that was the slip lining of a 36-inch water main in the downtown core of the city of Ottawa. It was my first large diameter water main project. It was in a high-profile area, in a road that was in good condition, so it was a great candidate for Trenchless Technologies. So I partnered with Ian Doherty, who I'd heard speak at the 1995 No Dig show in Toronto. And we were retained by a person that many of us know as the executive director of Trenchless of NESTT, and that was Mike Wilmotz. He was our client at that point in time. And so between Mike and Ian Doherty and myself, we were able to successfully complete that project. And we got to work with some great people along the way, experts that we brought onto the team, including the Canadian National Research Council, that helped us analyze the composite pipe functioning. So it was a real eye-opener to see that project because it was done in a fraction of the time that open cut would have been completed, and at a much less disruption, and in a very safe manner as well. So it's a project that I'm very proud of. We won several awards, including a national award, and so we're very proud of that project. So that one definitely stands out as maybe not my first, but my first big project.
Mm-hmm. What year was that?
That I think it was 1997 or 98, Sharon. I'm right around that time frame. It was fairly early on in terms of lining large diameter water mains. There weren't too many that had been completed in the way we were approaching it at that time.
Now, you mentioned you've been with Robinson Consultants your entire career, which is kind of an anomaly of sorts in business. And people do a lot of job hopping over the course of their careers. So I find that interesting that you've been there, and now you're the president, actually, of Robinson Consultants. You started as an intern, you said, and
that's right.
You're now the president. Has your focus always been on the rehab side for the most part during that time?
For the most part. I was curious about all aspects of Trenchless Technology, so I did work on a couple of new installation projects early on, and then some smaller rehab projects. I guess it's that first experience with that large diameter water main slip lining project that I talked about that really got me to focus more on the rehab side of the business. After seeing, as I said, like how quickly it went, the pipe went in the ground, and how much reduction in impacts there were to traffic and the road surface and so on, I could just see that there were some great benefits for residents and businesses. And for that reason, I started to promote rehab approaches to projects for our clients. And so it was the evolution of that project that led me down the rehab side of the business.
Now, you mentioned NASTT a little bit earlier. You've been active in that organization for many years. How did you first come to be involved as an active member in NASTT?
Actually, I'm going to start backing up even a little bit more and talking about how I even heard about Trenchless Technologies. And it was an older engineer that was in our office at that point in time, and I guess he must have seen something in terms of curiosity built within me. And he used to drop the TT magazine on my desk when he was done with it all the time. And so that's how I started to learn more about and want to know more about Trenchless Technologies. So that was my first awareness of Trenchless Technologies, and then that's how I became aware of NASTT as well. So I joined our local NASTT chapter in the early 2000s and had a great time sharing information and coordinating education sessions at the chapter level. And then I needed to expand my learning opportunities, so I started to regularly attend no-dig shows and started to present papers and even volunteered as a NASTT rehab course instructor. Ultimately then was invited to join the NASTT board, and then in 2013 and 2014 was the chair. And if I can, just for a moment, in that short time as chair of NASTT, and with the assistance of a great board that I learned so much from, and of course the great assistance from my vice chair, Kim Staley, and George Regula as past chair, we were able to accomplish a lot well with NASTT for that short period of time. So that's kind of the evolution of my experience with NASTT from the chapter level to finally being the chair.
What impact has working with NASTT had on you professionally?
Well, that's a bit of a loaded question because it had a huge impact on my career and me professionally. But firstly, there's the great networking opportunities. not just across the show and all the attendees at the show, but also, again, working with the board that I had the opportunity to work with. I learned so much from them on both the business and the Trenchless side of the organization. So there were the networking opportunities that helped me. There was the amazing education that I think is instrumental in developing our skills that you get at no-dig shows. Trenchless technologies are always changing, and we've found that at no-dig shows, we've found that attendance at no-dig shows is an extremely important opportunity to keep on top of the industry. So being involved with NESTT and being attendees and regular participants in various parts of the NESTT business really helped propel our firm into the trenchless industry and made us as successful as we were luckily enough to become.
Being active in NASCT and later its chairman, as you noted, gave you the opportunity to travel to other cities around the country, around Canada, United States, and other countries outside of North America, and seeing how trenchless is being utilized in those areas.
Yeah, so you're right. And I'll touch on the ISTT part of it because I think that was the most interesting part of the differences between what we see here in North America and what we see internationally. I was able to attend a number of ISTT functions around the world and network with the various society leaders around the world and share our experiences. And I met with some great people that were ambassadors for their societies and for the trenchless industry. And I'm fortunate to still be able to connect with a number of them. But these discussions led to a number of points that I just want to touch on. It was very eye-opening to understand where other countries were in the use of trenchless technologies. Some countries were very advanced, and others are just starting down this path, which I suppose you should expect in a diverse world. But in our world here in North America, trenchless technologies are mainstream now, and but in other parts of the world, they're not. And then some of the other differences was the work environment in some parts of the world. We have a very safe work environment here in North America, very similar to many parts of the world. However, there are other regions around the world where the social setting causes challenges that we would never have to consider in our work, in our day-to-day work environment. Trenchless practitioners around the world are not just faced with technological issues; they're also faced with work environment issues. So it was very rewarding or very interesting to hear some of those experiences. The benefit of attending the ISTT shows was that we got to see some of our great technologies from North America being used around the world, but vice versa. We got to see technologies from around the world that hadn't made it to North America yet, and that eventually many of them did. Because we saw a number of product debuts at no-dig shows and for products that are now being used in North America that we saw for years in advance around the world, and we were able to see those at these ISTT shows. And then, of course, the ISTT cultural experience was fantastic. I love to travel, and I love to see different countries and different cultures. And the host countries often arrange some great cultural experiences, so that was definitely an added bonus of attending these ISTT shows.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. What are some of the countries that you were able to visit?
Well, South Africa, which we did a safari and did some great white shark cage diving. So it's South Africa and Brazil, Spain, Sydney, Australia, Turkey. Probably forgetting some of them. There's a number of them. So it was great benefit of being part of NESTT. So maybe this will lure a few people to start to join NESTT and aspire to be chair someday and get to experience what I got to experience.
Well, it is pretty cool, though, those countries. And also, like you said, you got to see how trenchless is being approached in countries outside of North America and where some of the areas that it's expanding into.
Yeah, one of the objectives of ISTT is to host the ISTT show in different regions, and it's not always the region where trenchless technologies are booming. It's often the areas where it's just starting to get established, and so by bringing the ISTT show to those regions, the thought is that it would help boost the trenchless industry. So you would see countries that are just starting out in the trenchless industry host some of these shows, and for them, they got the benefit of having people from all around the world come to their cities or their countries and educate them on what's available out in the rest of the world.
I'm kind of taking it a step further. What are your thoughts on the evolution of trenchless technology? I mean, and how it's evolved in your time in the industry?
Well, it's been a long time in the industry, over 30 years. And not only are there many more technologies available today, but they're also much more proven. The existing technologies, for example, have been refined over the years. And that's in response to equipment manufacturer inputs, operator improvements, engineering input. And as a result of these improvements to trenchless technologies, the industry has grown. And it's not just the existing technologies that have contributed to the growth. New technologies are also being developed all the time, and they're expanding the capabilities of the industry. So there's definitely strong potential for growth in the trenchless industry for years to come as a result of these developing technologies.
Now, in the article that we ran, the profile we ran on you in the March issue, you talked about the importance of mentors and how you had great mentors early on in your career and how that they helped you. And now it's kind of your turn in that role, and you've embraced that role of being a mentor. Can you talk a little bit about why that's so important to you?
Sure. I mean, the mentorship that I received was instrumental to my success. So it was very clear to me that this is something that we must continue. So it's a big focus of our firm. And when I talk about mentorship, I often talk about education as well associated with that. The development of my career and the opportunities to work under some great people who understood trenchless technologies, but also to attend NODIG shows and learn was a key part to my success. But I'll broaden that out a little bit more beyond my personal beliefs with regard to mentorship and my firm's beliefs. You know, the industry we're hearing is predicting some potential shortfalls and skill sets in the trenchless industry to replace those people that are retiring. And so I think as an industry, so again, beyond my own beliefs, I think as an industry, we need to support mentorship, and we need to offer learning opportunities to these young people to help keep our industries healthy as it is. So I strongly believe in mentorship and education, and I think it's good for us all, personally, in terms of our firm as well as in terms of our industry.
What did you learn early on in your career that perhaps you apply to how you work today?
Over the years, you can get kind of not stuck in a rut, but doing the same thing and not pushing yourself. And I learned from a number of my mentors as well that sometimes you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone, and that helps you both personally and professionally. You know, I would always challenge people to push themselves a little bit more. And then, of course, this is maybe a dad comment rather than an engineering manager comment, but you don't want to run away from troubles. You know, you learn a lot more from running towards them and to help solve them. And that's something I believe in. And so you've got to keep that in mind as young people, that you're never measured. Your success is never measured by how you perform when things are going perfectly. Sometimes, your success is measured by how you deal with things in difficult times.
What are some of your interests or maybe hobbies outside of work? I mean, is it too cliche to ask someone who's Canadian if you like hockey? I don't know.
Well, that's a given, Sharon. That's a given. Yeah, so I used to play hockey. I'm getting too old for that now. Too many aches and pains after each hockey game. But I guess what keeps me busy now outside of work is the fact that I have a cottage about an hour from where I live now, just outside of the hometown that I grew up in. So I have lots of family and childhood friends that are still living there. So I like to spend as much time as I can working and recreationally resting at the cottage. So and as I said, in the wintertime, I snowmobile, I downhill ski, and I used to play hockey. But in the summertime, I golf, I water ski, I fish, and I spend time on the lake with family and friends. But I touched on skiing as well there, and that leads to, of course, my passion that I alluded to before, which is traveling. Nothing more seems to satisfy my sense of curiosity than some traveling. I feel most alive when I'm traveling, exploring these new cultures and traditions. My role with NESTT and my involvement with ISTT definitely helped me solve and satisfy some of those curiosities. And as I alluded to before, I attended some great conference invitations.
These past 2 years had it been hard for you then?
It was very hard.
Between lockdown and not traveling.
It has been. It's definitely created a lot more time because I've got more availability for things because I'm spending less time traveling. But it's been hard not to spend time in other parts of the world.
Finally, I just wanted to get your perspective or thoughts on today's trenchless market and its impact and overall growth.
Well, as I said, in my over 30 years of experience, which seems like a lot, and I keep coming back to that. I can't believe it's been over 30 years. But I've seen trenchless technologies grow from a fringe business to becoming more of a core construction approach. It's no longer the second thought. And we have our trenchless pioneers, some of them on this list of persons of the year to thank for this, because they've successfully created an innovative and proven approach to install new infrastructure as well as opportunities to extend the life of an asset. To their credit, Trenchless Technologies have become a very reliable, affordable option for infrastructure owners to get more bang for their buck, as they say, to do it with less impact and to do it safely. So it's an industry that is really, in 30 years, has developed into something that is a solid business that we wouldn't have dreamed of, 30 or 40 years ago.
It's interesting. You keep saying 30 years. We're celebrating our 30th anniversary as a magazine, and it sort of came about the same time you started.
Yeah, it was great to hear Bernie talk about your 30 years in the business when we were at the No Dig Show. I'm sure it's hard for him to believe it's been 30 years as well.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Trenchless Technology Podcast. My thanks to Derek Potvin for joining me on this episode. You can learn more about Derek and our 2022 Trenchless Technology Person of the Year by visiting trenchlesstechnology.com. This has been a Trenchless Technology Podcast. To hear more of my conversations about the trenchless industry, go to trenchlesstechnology.com/podcast.